What's up, guys? Chris Schwartz-Edmisten here from Schwartz-Edmisten Web Design. In today's video, we're going to be looking at how to vertically center content in sections that have full height banners. Let's jump right in. So I want to start off by saying the value in this tutorial is not necessarily going to be the end result. The value in this tutorial is going to be learning my process for writing the CSS. So a lot of times, people get stuck in the habit of writing CSS based on, a certain page or based on a certain section. But in this video, we're going to explore what I call writing template CSS. So it's based on the knowledge of the template structure in different classes that get added in different situations. And so we're writing situational CSS. So in this video, we're going to write one line of CSS, but based on the classes that we target, it'll apply to any section on any page that meets this very specific criteria. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about our end goal that we're shooting for. So if you notice on this website, this content is perfectly centered. So we have our header up here and we have a background color on it. So the bottom of the header is very clearly defined with this border here. And this space between the content and the bottom of the header and the bottom of the content and the top of the screen is the same. So our content looks centered. But if I go ahead and hit edit and then edit the site header, and I go to colors and then I go to toggle on this transparent setting. So since we don't have a clearly defined border at the bottom of the header anymore, the content appears like it's as if it's a bit lower down on the page. So this distance here visually is very different than this whole distance here. And that's because the content is still being aligned vertically compared to as if the bottom of the header were here. So this is really only a problem on sections where the first section on the page has a background image and the header is transparent and the background image is full height. So on other pages that don't have a full width background image, like there's no need to move up the content because it looks fine. But on the home page, as we can see before, there's way more space between the top of the content and the top of the site and the bottom of the content and the bottom of the site. So we're going to talk about when this very specific situation occurs, how we can vertically center our content. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to limit our CSS that we write to only when the header has a transparent background. Because as we said before, when the header has a background, we have a very clear anchor that the content is aligned to. So let's go ahead and look at the structure of the page. If I toggle these closed, we can get a better look at it. So the normal page structure that every website has, we have a body class here. We then have this site wrapper class that Squarespace uses. Here's the floating cart icon in the bottom right hand corner. And then we have our very, normal for a website. We have the header, we then have the main content, and then we have the footer. So when the header is transparent, this class gets added to the body that says tweak transparent header. And this class is only added to the body if that setting is turned on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this class, tweak transparent header, because we want to limit our CSS just to this one situation, the header being transparent. So if the client were to go in and for some reason turn off that setting and the header then had a background color on it, we would no longer want to have the content be moved up in the section or else it would look too high up. So that's the first criteria that we want to target for. So the next criteria that we want to target for is we only want this apply to the first section on the page and only if it has a background image. So if we remember from the about page that we looked at, we didn't need it to apply there, only when the first section has a background image. So Let's jump back into the structure of the page. If I toggle open our main page ID here, so this is the container that houses the page information. We then have an article class with a class of sections. So that kind of tells us, okay, this is probably going to house all of the sections on the page. And that's exactly what it does. So then each section of a page gets its own section container with a class of page section. So as I scroll down here and hover over each page section, you'll see them turn blue over here. So each section on the page gets its own section with a class of page section. Okay, so when pages have a background image, they get a class of has background added to the section. So what we're going to do is we're only going to target the first section, and we're only going to target it if it has this class has background. So within the body class, we're going to target has background because that's targeting any container that has a background, but we only want to target it if it's the first child. So all of these sections are children of this parent container called sections, and we only want to target the first child. So dot has, background, first child. But, so we've limited the CSS to just the first section if it has a background, but that doesn't quite do what we want it to. And we have to actually add, a property to move the content up. So you'll see that the first section on a page gets padding added to the top that's equal to the height of the header. So that's that green up here. And if I toggle that off, then you'll notice that everything jumps up. So to visually vertically center this content within this section, all we have to do is set the padding top to 0. So what I'm going to do is write padding top 0. And because the padding top is added as an inline style, we have to use the important tag. So we can see that if we scroll down to the style tag, here we go, style, padding top 135 pixels. So whenever styles are added inline, we have to use the important tag. That's the only way to override these inline styles. And so you know it's an inline style. You don't have to search through the HTML. You will be able to find it, but you don't have to search through the HTML to find inline styles. In Chrome Inspect, if it's up here in this element.style, then you know that it's an inline style. And you know that you have to use an important tag to override it. So I'm going to add my important tag. And then you'll see the content jump up, which it already did because we toggled off that setting to begin with. So now my padding top of 0 is being applied. Perfect. So if I save that, no other content in any other section is affected because it's only affecting the first section of a page and only if it has a background image. But there's some more criteria that we need to match, because if I change the section height to small, it's like it becomes very clear that it needs that padding because the header content is actually overlapping our actual content. So we definitely don't want it to apply unless this section is a full height image section. So even if I go to the section height medium, like it still looks a little bit crowded compared to this header content. So we only want it to apply if the section height is set to like the full height of the screen. So the section height, that setting there in the section styles, if I go to inspect, those get added as classes to the section. So here, because I have it set to a section height of large, it gets a class added to that section called section height large. So not only do we only want to limit our targeting to has background down here, we also want to limit our targeting to .section height large. So what I'm going to do is right before this .has background, I'm going to write .section height large. Perfect. And now if the client were to change the height of this one section to medium or small, you can see it still keeps that padding top on the section. It's only if we were to flip it to large that the padding turns to 0. And now it's vertically centered based on the top and the bottom of the screen, not the bottom of the header, which we don't really have a distinct visual border. So that is it for this video. I hope this sort of opens your eyes and makes you just more curious about the structure of Squarespace. It's not just about writing the CSS. You also have to understand the HTML side of things. So go digging a little bit for different classes that get added in certain situations. So again, we wrote one style here that's like one line of CSS, and we got so much functionality out of it. This CSS will not break if the client comes in and turns off this transparent header setting. It now reverts back to normal because of how we've set up this CSS, and it's perfectly centered vertically. If the client was to come in here and change the section height or delete the background, all of those things would not break the CSS that we wrote because we paid such close attention to the structure of the page and wrote it for this very one specific scenario. And again, we didn't have to specify a section, data section ID. We didn't have to specify, a collection ID, limiting it just to this one page or one section. This would apply to any section that meets this specific criteria. Okay, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point. I think you guys get it. Go explore Squarespace's structure. I'm planning a course actually to do a deep dive and help you guys sort of understand different classes that get added in different situations, and I think that'll really help with the CSS side of things. So, of course, I'll let you guys know when I'm working on that. And if any of you are interested in something like that, like a deep dive into Squarespace's structure, let me know in the comments below. That'll just help me gauge interest and help me understand if that's something that I should spend my time and energy on, or if maybe you guys are interested in something else. All right, that's it for me. Have an awesome week. I will see you in the next one.